are not.
You going?
Look at that pretty, pretty face. Okay, everybody, good morning. We're about to set off for Reading, but before we do, we want to capture this wonderful interview. So, I know we all know who you are, but just for the peeps that maybe don't, can you tell us who you are?
Yes, I'm Christina Hildebrand, and in this movement I have two non-profits, A Voice for Choice and A Voice for Choice Advocacy.
Okay.
I live here in California.
So we're going to talk about both of those, but
Yes.
first of all, how many children do you have?
I have two children, they're 8 and 11, and they're completely unvaccinated.
And we have had the absolute pleasure of meeting them, and they are absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful children. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to when you were pregnant with your eldest. So she's 11 now.
Yeah.
What was your thinking on vaccines? What kind of a person were you at that time when you found out you're pregnant? If anything, what were you thinking on vaccines?
So I didn't really think about them. I grew up in England, and I now know, I went back and looked at my medical records, that I had 7 shots when I was a kid. I had measles, I had mumps, I had rubella, I had chickenpox, I had scarlet fever, I had whooping cough, I had everything under the sun as a child.
The diseases?
The diseases, yes.
And you survived?
And I'm alive, yes.
Do you remember any of them as being awful, or do you just...
I remember chickenpox as being itchy, and my mother put calamine lotion on it, so it was really smelly. That or apple cider vinegar, and both of those were really smelly. Mumps, I remember having a huge neck, and other than that, I don't remember them. The scarlet fever was scarlet fever. I got antibiotics for, and I didn't usually take antibiotics, and so I had the strawberry. I hated the flavour of the strawberry antibiotics, but that's the only thing that I remember about that one.
So you've survived
I basically
them all.
survived them and was fine and got them like as a child. So if you'd asked me what I thought, like at the time I was pregnant, about vaccines, what I would have said to you is it's a virus in saline water, and it's supposed to boost your immune system, and it's a good thing. So I lived in California, I was pregnant, I was super, it was my first child, I was super cautious about what I ate, made sure it was all organic, like kept pesticides out, make sure I didn't use plastic bottles and all of that stuff to like keep this little thing inside me as clean and pure as possible. And at that time the internet wasn't, it wasn't as prolific. There wasn't all the stuff we have today on the internet. And so I went and I got a birthing plan off the internet to see, I wanted a natural birth. I wanted to be as natural in my whole cycle. I wanted a home birth. My ex, we decided against it because it was our first child, and so I knew it was going to be a hospital birth, but I knew that I didn't want to go into the hospital before I was 5 centimeters dilated. I wanted to do hypnobirthing. I wanted to do the whole natural thing. And so when I pulled this birth plan off the internet, one of the things on it was the hepatitis B shot and whether you want that or not. And I looked at it and I was just like, the only thing I know about hepatitis B is it's sexually transmitted, and why would my 12-hour-old child need that? And so that started me going down the rabbit hole, and I'm a researcher by profession, and so you take a researcher and a type A personality and you go down a rabbit hole and you never come back out again. And so initially it was, okay, we don't need to do hepatitis B on the first day, maybe we'll push it to the first month, and then I went and researched what vaccines were needed needed at that point at month 1, and did research on each of those and realized that none of them were they really necessary. And I kept asking that question, and I kept asking, when are they really necessary? And
they're asking about the vitamin K.
Yes, they both got vitamin K. My second child got half the shot of vitamin K. I didn't realize that vitamin K contained aluminum at that point. To me, it was vitamin K. And so I didn't even think about it. With the second one, I had done more research. I, again, still didn't know it could contain aluminum. I actually don't know. There are two, now I know, there are 2 types that do and that don't, and 1 type that does. And I don't know what my kids got. So they may have gotten one that, but with Olivia, she was smaller, and we specifically asked for half the dose to be given, which the doctor in the hospital was not happy with, but we pushed it, and we said we'd monitor it, and that our pediatrician, if needed, would give the other half of it at a later date, and we never gave it. So I was more aware, but I wasn't, to me vitamin K was a vitamin, and it was not an argument I wanted to have with my ex at that point, so we agreed on half the dosage. So
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, so with the vaccines, we went through, I went through each of them and did all my research. I mean, somebody asked me a few months ago, how much research on vaccines have you done? And I was just like, I don't even know. And I went back and I sort of calculated generally, and I think I've done over 10,000 hours worth of research, because I constantly get more information. I'm constantly wanting to, update my database in my brain. But I think the other piece of it that I talked to you a little bit this morning about it, that I find really, really important for parents who don't vaccinate, is to get over the fear of the diseases. So I had all of the diseases as a child, so I knew that I had lived through them. But at the same time, I was in the pediatrician's office, and the pediatrician was saying, if you don't get this vaccine and your child gets the measles, she's going to die from the measles. Do you really want her to die from the measles, or from tetanus, or from polio, or from any of the diseases? And you're put in that position, and it's kind of like, no, I don't want my kid to die. And I knew I had the research, but what I really needed was to understand, if my child got the measles, do I know how to treat them? Do I know how to keep them as healthy as possible so that they could get through it? And at this point, I would say yes. If my kids get the measles, they'll be miserable, as any child with the measles is. But do I think that they'll live? Absolutely. And that takes us to the title of this, which is My Kids Survived Whooping Cough. This last year, they both got, the older one got a cough. Initially, it didn't sound like whooping cough to me. It was just a bad cough. And for the first 2 weeks, she was coughing a lot. We were in Europe, and she was coughing a lot. And by about the 2.5 weeks in, she then started getting the whoopy bit at the end of it. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I think this may actually be whooping cough. We didn't have it diagnosed, because by the time we realized with both of them that it could be whooping cough, there's nothing you can do after 2 weeks. So we wrote it out. We used the high levels of vitamin C, which definitely made a difference. So when they were on higher levels of vitamin C, their cough was not that like constricting cough. And if we forgot, or they were at school or something and they didn't get that constant dosage, it definitely got worse. We saw it got worse, but it lasted 3 months probably, where they were coughing, but they're fine. And if it was, I truly believe it was, but we haven't had the diagnosis, because we didn't want to be the unvaccinated.
But you had
people,
the hoop.
But we had the hoop. Yeah, there was definitely the hoop. I mean, my older daughter, after 2.5 weeks, she got that constriction, and just really. And it was interesting, it only happened for both of them once a day. So once a day they'd have a really bad cough and they would hoop, and then the rest of the day they were pretty much fine. And the levels of vitamin C definitely made a difference.
And you kept them at home?
We kept them at home when we realized it was, but by that point we were actually traveling through Europe, so the first 2 weeks I didn't actually think they had whooping cough. It was only after the 2.5 weeks, and by that point they weren't contagious. So
did you get a lot of grief from other parents or other doctors or anybody really about the fact your children are unvaccinated?
So up until 2 years ago, only our doctor and my ex and I knew, or not knew necessarily, but it was only common knowledge to those people that my kids were unvaccinated, because I truly believe your medical history is your personal history, and you shouldn't have to share that with everyone. Since SB 277, I have become much more vocal about it, and I now don't. Well, I actually have a problem talking about it from the perspective of, I still think it's their personal history and their privacy, and if they had cancer or something else, I don't think it's for me to share it with their world, their school, or whoever. I really think medical issues are private issues. But given SB 277, I didn't feel like I could be silent anymore, and so I now. There are many people that know my kids are unvaccinated now that didn't before, because it was truly between me, my ex, and our doctor.
And how are they? I mean, do they give you grief about it, or they just accept it?
I think I'm such an outspoken person on the whole vaccine issue now, and that they don't. There are people that definitely question me, and there's the other side that say, well, you're not doing it for the greater good. Think about the other people. But my kids have a medical exemption, so. I also, it's what's really interesting is you go have the conversation about my kids are unvaccinated, and people are like, oh my goodness, you're gonna, if they get sick, they're gonna make other people sick. You're defying public health and public safety. And then when I say, well, my kids have a medical exemption, they go, oh, well, that's a different story then. But that child that I just talked about that was unvaccinated without you knowing had a medical exemption is exactly the same child that's over here with a medical exemption. But and is just as much of a risk. as you know, both of them are the same child, the same, you know, but because they have a medical exemption, it's completely legitimate medical exemption based on their family history, based on autoimmune disorders. But because they have that, it suddenly puts them in a different category, and they're fine now. Now your child's fine to play with my child, kind of thing. So it's just an interesting change of perspective once you mention medical exemption.
Let's talk about their health, because
Yes.
we interview the vaccinated, and they talk about high-pitched screams, screaming, blood-clotting screams. We talk about ear infections, non-stop ear infections, and head banging, and eczema, and it goes on.
Yep.
So, talk to me about your children's health. What kind of health have they been in their early years, and have they got now?
So overall, they're very healthy kids compared to. And I will say, compared to all the, like when I see the kids in their class and that type of thing, they've definitely gotten sick. I see sickness as an immune booster, so, you know, if they didn't get sick, I'd probably be worried too. They've had colds. The one thing, when they get a cold, they get over them really quickly, so they don't have colds that last for more than 3 days. But overall, they're really healthy. Like, my older daughter has allergies. They're not bad allergies, they're just annoying allergies. They definitely are. They don't have skin issues. They've got little things here and there, but it's nothing that I would say is abnormal. Overall, they're very, very healthy.
Did they have ear infections in their first couple of years?
The older one had one ear infection. She was walking. She was probably three or so. And it's the only time she's been on antibiotics.
And then you're a very careful mum with food, and so it's very important to you how you're, which is always what Dr. Suzanne says is, you can't just unvaccinate and eat bad food. So
we really strive to eat. You know, I really strive to give them organic food, especially when we're home. So when it's definitely when we're on holiday or when we go out to dinner. I stress the healthy part of it. So vegetables, meat and fish, and that's cooked right there rather than processed food. So I'd say we eat unprocessed food mostly is the biggest difference. But when we're home, we make sure it's all organic, it's all grass-fed, and really nutrient dense.
Is there any vaccine on the schedule right now that you might consider for your children or yourself?
No.
And why is that?
Because I look at the risk to benefit ratio, and I look at the risk of them getting any of the diseases that they're vaccine preventable, that are vaccines for, and I look at those diseases, and the likelihood of getting them first off is close to nothing, and the likelihood of them having a severe reaction to that is also even smaller. So, and then I look at the vaccines. Once you've put a vaccine in a child, there's risk of side effects right there and then. And when you look at the ingredients of vaccines, it just, all of those things, it just doesn't make sense. The risks of that are much higher than them getting the disease and suffering from the disease in some way, or having side effect that's equal to any side effect of the vaccine. And once you've done the research on what's in these vaccines, all the ingredients, and you've done the research of what those do, especially aluminum, it's one of the things that my kids have a disposition to autoimmune disorders, and I know it from their family history. It's also been genetically shown. And when I look at that, any vaccine that they put in, it may not happen the first time, it may not happen the second time, it may not happen the third time, but at some point that level of aluminum is going to trigger that autoimmune disorder. And when I look at their long-term health and the capabilities that they have right now, I'm willing to take the risk, and it is a risk, and it's a risk I've made for my family. And I don't, I say to other people, you've got to make the decision for yourself of what works for you. And if somebody does all the research and comes out of it and says, I really truly believe vaccines are better for my family than not vaccinating, then I don't judge them, because if they've done the research. But from my experience, once you've done the research, you don't come to that conclusion.
And how old's your little one? Okay.
8. So I've got 8 and 11.
8. And so, just so you know, peeps, she came on the bus this morning, and then she popped back in just to remind us, just wondered if we knew that the X was not in the correct place on the outside.
Yes, my 8-year-old said that.
8-year-old had observed. Now, not many people have noticed that. The few of you that were with us from the beginning know that. But she's the first little one to come up and just say...
She told me, so she had made this she has a cookie app on my phone, and she'd made a cookie with Vaxxed on it, and she'd made the X red on this cookie on the app, And this morning she came on the bus to sign her name on the inside of it, and she went back outside and she tells me, "Mommy, you got it wrong. It's the first X that's red, not the second X that's red." And I was just like, no, I know that. We then had to come in and look at Polly's shirt, which has the correct X, to confirm that it wasn't my mistake.
Yeah, but I mean, that's bright. That's bright. Yeah. So let's talk about the work that you're doing, because it's very important. There's a lot of people here thanking you for your work, and also as well, there's a lot of people saying they can't thank you enough for what you do. So for those that don't know, explain what you do.
So I had the idea of a Voice for Choice many years ago, but I had 2 kids, 2 businesses, which I still have, and was just like, when I'm retired and don't have kids in my household, I'm going to start a non-profit that basically goes up against Big Ag and Big Pharma, because I see them as, and it started with Big Ag, it started with raw milk here in California, and that was sort of my dream somewhere down the road. And then SB 277 came along, and I realized that I couldn't just sit still and not do anything. And so we started the 2 organizations. The first one we had was a 501c4. We still have it, but that's the lobbying side of things. So we started off with fighting SB 277, and then we now have the nonprofit, the 501c3, which is a Voice for Choice, and that one is more for education purposes. And so basically our goal, our mission statement is to educate and advocate for informed choice and transparency of anything that goes into your body. So it's food, air, water, pharmaceuticals, vaccines, anything that you have the knowledge of what's in it, and then you make the choice of whether you want to put that in it. From the point of like processed fast food, if you know what's in it and that's what you want to put in your body, I'm fine with that, but I want you to know what's in it, and most times you don't know what's in it. Same thing with vaccines. I want you to know all about vaccines and the fact that what's in them, the fact that they have no liability, all of that information. And if you have all of that information and you still want to vaccinate, then I can't say don't do it, because you can't. I don't want you telling me to vaccinate. So I have to have that reciprocity. But so Voice for Choice, I would say 90% of the stuff we do is on vaccines. My dream was to go big, go nationwide, do all of GMOs and chemtrails and everything, just attack it all. But California, with the vaccine issue, has so much stuff to work on that we have sort of focused. We do work on a few other things. So there's a local school in Morgan Hill they're trying to build a school on a toxic dump, basically, a toxic farmland, and so we're helping them with that. So there are other projects that we're involved in, but the vaccine really takes up most of our time. And on that, we kind of we've got 3 different approaches going. We've got a lawsuit against SB 277 that's active, and we just filed our response to their dismissal, and it's based all on constitutionality. So, and the reason we did that, I went to our lawyers and I basically said, I want to win. I want to get rid of SB 277. What's the quickest way we can do that? And we discussed it at length and basically decided that the constitutionality of it was a place where whatever judge you get, whether they're pro or against vaccines, it doesn't matter, because if you look at the constitutionality of it, there's not a leg to stand on. And so we're doing that. Legislation, we're looking at different legislation here in California. We do want to at some point repeal SB 277 and bring back the personal belief exemption. There's a lot of work to do on that. It's not right now, it's not the right time. There's too many legislators that voted for SB 277 that we're not going to be able to flip them until something big happens or until they term out and we get new people in. So that's sort of the focus there. We definitely are working on it so that when that time comes, and hopefully it'll be sooner than later, and maybe the lawsuit will influence that as well, when the time comes that we can move on it and act on it. And then the last piece, which I actually think is the most important piece right now, is the education of people and the masses, because I really feel like we need to get to a tipping point on the groundswell, and once we've done that, the legislation and the law and the legal case they just have got the momentum going. And so the education piece is a lot of what, and specifically education outside the choir. So getting people in that haven't researched vaccines at all, people who have eaten organic or use non-toxic household cleaners, or parents who don't use BPA plastic bottles for their kids, things like that they're already thinking about the toxicity, but they've gone into their doctor and they've trusted their doctor. So
Can people join Voice for Choice?
They can. So they can go on our website and they can sign up for their newsletter. We don't have membership in the sense of you become a member and you have to pay dues or anything like that. But we'll put you on our mailing list. And our mailing list is, we send out newsletters, but they're very action oriented. So if you get a newsletter, the amazing thing is the people that we have on our mailing list, when we send a letter out that asks for them to do something, they do it and we get a response. There was actually the SB 277 regulations, code of regulations. We were watching it, but we didn't get notice that they had the hearing on it until the day of. And I sent out an email at, I think it was about 3:30, because I spent that day going through the regulations word by word and putting together our organization's letter, and we sent out an email at 3:30. They had to be in by 5, and we got, I think, something like 700 emails sent in an hour and a half, which was just stuff like that. So we have the momentum. So everybody, if you want to be on our newsletter, I'm happy to have people join. You don't have to pay for it. The other big thing that we've done in California this in the past 2 years is we don't have a list of doctors, but we have doctors who are willing to look at the holistic child and evaluate for medical exemptions. And so that's something when a lot of parents go to their own doctor and the doctor says, I'm not willing to write a medical exemption. We even have parents that the doctor has said that this child should never get a vaccine again because of their reaction to it, but I'm not willing to give a medical exemption because I'm worried about my license and I don't want to take that risk. I don't want to have the California Medical Board after us, which they are going after these doctors. And so we have been able to help parents find a doctor that will look at the child holistically. It doesn't mean to say that the doctor will give every one of them a medical exemption. They're not paid off. They don't ask, $500 and I'll just sign the list. They all dot their I's and cross their T's on it because they have to. So, but we've been able to assist parents in that. And so if anyone wants a second opinion on their medical exemption, we're happy to help with that.
So how do they get on your mailing list and contact you? What's the
address? So info@avoiceforchoice.org.
Info
at avoiceforchoice.org, all spelled out.
So what's the main thing that Californians can do? Because we speak to a lot of people here in California. They just don't know what to do. There's quite a lot of different groups.
Yes.
They don't know who to join, who to be, where
to
be.
My advice to anyone, if you want to really spend time volunteering, we'll always take volunteers. We've got plenty of stuff for people to work on. But on a one-on-one basis, my challenge to everybody is talk to one person that you know or you don't know that is not on our side. Doesn't mean to say they're against us, but that just are unaware, to talk to them and plant the seeds. And we have a brochure on our website that goes through five hook points, I call them, which are things like the fact that there's no liability, the ingredients, the side effects, those types of things that if you plant the seed, somebody picks up on one of them. I never know which one they're going to pick up on. Some people go, oh my God, there's no liability for vaccines. So you for real? I now question them. There are other people that you tell them that there's 250 micrograms of aluminum, and they're like, what? They're where I was, which is saline virus. That's what's in a vaccine. They don't know all the crap that's in the vaccine. So there's different people that recognize different things, or peanut allergies is another one, or eczema that people think is normal, or the way kids are today, and you sort of say, well, when did that happen? And they're like, well, I don't really know, I'd have to go back. And they go back, plant the seed for them to go back and look, and it was after this vaccination or round of vaccinations that it got much worse. So there are different pieces to how you hook people in, but I would say I challenge everyone to speak to one person that you have never spoken to before about it, or have a follow-up conversation every single day, and that's the way we'll turn the tide, because it's something everyone can do.
Everybody thinks you're absolutely amazing. They love you.
Thank you.
They either know you or they're just getting to know you, and they just can't believe how knowledgeable you are. Have you got a message for unity? Because there's a lot of people here that do feel a little sort of nervous.
Yes.
What's the message here? How can we all? Because we're going to win this if we join together, aren't we?
Yes.
So what's your message to people?
So in California or nationwide or across the different groups?
Let's do nationwide, because it's got to be the same thing, hasn't it?
So I truly believe that where we come together, so we have our vaccine, people who are aware about vaccines, those people, but I think there's the GMO, there's the fracking, there's anything that has to do with toxins going into your body. those people need to come together, because they're all fighting the same person and, you know, the same other side. They're all fighting big ag or big pharma, and we won't win against them unless we come together and push up against them. So nationally, I think that's the piece to me, is if we could get all the people that are concerned with any toxin in their world, and it doesn't mean to say I need to have the same opinions as you on geoengineering or, you know, any of those things. I may not agree with everything, but I've got my one little thing, and I know the person I'm up against is big pharma or big ag. We need to come together against them. You know, as it goes for different groups, to me, as long as we're all going in the same direction, as long as we are all moving in this goal of getting rid of big pharma and big ag and the power that they have. You know, I don't expect big pharma to go away, but the power in our lobbying in Washington D.C. and the power they have over advertising, that's where we need to go at them. And if we can, as long as everybody is moving in that direction, you know, there's always going to be rifts between different people, because different people have different opinions. So, you know, I take our lawsuit, for example. Our lawsuit is constitutionally based. Do I believe that there should be a science-based lawsuit? Absolutely. But we're not ready for that. We're not going to, I mean, my goal is to overthrow SB 277. In order to overthrow SB 277, we decided that, or our lawyers advised us that this was the best route for us. There are many people that disagree with that. There are many people that say you should get the science out there. You need to put the science in a lawsuit, and we'll absolutely support any lawsuit out there, but our goal is to get rid of SB 277, and we feel that this is the route to go down. It's going to get us there fastest.
Well, everybody, I mean, yeah, they love you. They love you. I can see your heart. You've got loads of hearts coming in now.
It's interesting talking to Christina this morning. She was talking, and Polly, I know, has this same passion with the labeling, the diagnosis, and you brought up something about vaccine injury labeled as.
Right.
And I think that attracts a much greater audience, but also to create the awareness for parents who may not even know that their child had a reaction. Just explain a little bit about that, because you brought it up so eloquently this morning.
Sure. So I truly believe one of the ways, and unfortunately it has to do with vaccine injury, which is something that I wish upon no one. But right now, I mean, I go into my kids' school in their classroom and I look at these kids and I'm like, that one's vaccine injured, that one's vaccine injured. And the parents don't even know that they're vaccine injured, because they've got things like eczema that's normal. Or even for febrile seizures after a vaccine is considered normal. It's not normal. If your kid wasn't vaccinated, they wouldn't have that thing. And so to me, that's a vaccine injury. And I truly believe that, I don't know whether it's pharma orchestrated, but you know, you've got autistic parents of autistic kids that are in this group and sort of have their support system. You have parents of kids with peanut allergies, parents of kids with eczema, parents of kids with diabetes, parents of kids with some autoimmune disorders, parents of kids with cancer. And they're all in their little communities, but they're not calling it vaccine injury. And I would guess that a majority of those are vaccine injury. And so I would ask every parent that has a child that knows that they're vaccine injured to not say my child is autistic, or not say my child has ADHD, or not say my child has eczema, but to say my child is vaccine injured and has eczema, and with eczema, or you know, has eczema because of that. My child is vaccine injured and is autistic because of that. My child is vaccine injured and has a peanut allergy because of that. Because I think if you can create that unity of people who recognize that their child is vaccine injured, that is going to be powerful. Because when you come at this, you know, I've said this quite a few times, but I'll say it again. I truly believe we're in the Harvey Milk era of the gay rights movement, where there are people over there that are gay, that, you know, they're in a different corner in a restaurant. You kind of look at them, you're like, I don't know what they are, I don't know who they are, I don't really understand them, I don't understand, you know, that type of thing. And that's us anti-vaxxers, as they call us, over there, the weird people that don't vaccinate, that, you know, they're just over there. And I truly believe we need to come to the point where they came to with the gay rights movement, which is, I have a son or a daughter or a niece or a nephew or an uncle who is gay, and I know that they've fallen in love with somebody, and I like that person, and I trust that person, and they should have the same rights as we do. It brings it to a completely different place, and I think if we can do that, and again, I hate the fact that it has to do with vaccine injury, but if we could bring the fact that every family knows someone with autism, every family knows somebody with some chronic disorder of their child. I mean, we've got 1 in 2 kids that have something. You have to know somebody in your family or your friends that is afflicted. And if those people were saying, my child is vaccine injured, my child is vaccine injured, my child is vaccine injured, it suddenly becomes people saying, well, hang on, vaccine injured, why are these vaccines so great? Because they're injuring all of these people. Like, I have a niece that is vaccine injured. That makes you think again about what you do with vaccines. And so I think if we could call it vaccine injury across the board and use those words before you use any of the definitions of what your child is suffering from, if you use the word vaccine injury, I think we can bring people together much more quickly and get the word out and get the layperson recognizing that vaccine injury is something and it has to do with vaccines. It's not autism and it's not eczema, it's not this, and it's vaccine injury.
So anyone that knows somebody with any of those conditions that potentially could have been initiated by vaccines as a vaccine injury, share all of this stuff out. You've probably got 15, 20 people that you know with a form of vaccine injury, and that is important to share this. That will spread the news, that will create this uniform, united vaccine injury family and create the awareness that we need across society. I think that's massively important.
Is there anything else, Christina, you want to add to this? You're an amazing interview, everybody. I mean, you could talk forever and ever and ever.
I can talk forever and ever and
we
ever.
All can. No, we all can. I could interview you forever and ever. You just got like an 8-hour drive.
Yes, I know. You got a huge drive ahead of you.
But,
no, I thank you for what you're doing, because I think it is so valuable and so important, and so, you know, the word's getting out there, and it's really it's a movement, and I truly believe the more we can talk to people, the more seeds we can plant. And it doesn't mean to say, you know, I never think that when I start talking to somebody, by the end of the conversation, they're going to go, oh my God, I never want to use a vaccine again. And, you know, some people will have to vaccinate again, but if they vaccinate again and they get the lump on their arm, they think, oh, well, that's not actually normal, that I've got this huge lump on my arm and I can't use my arm. If that's what triggers it, then so be it. I would love for everyone not to come to the conclusion where I'm at after, but I've done huge amounts of research. So, you know, I don't expect anyone to get there in an hour or 2 hours, but I just say do your research. Read the vaccine package. If you're going to do nothing else, read the vaccine package insert before you go vaccinate.
And join Voice for Choice. I don't know that I'm joining. I'm going to go and join straight after this interview. I want your email.
So you can just say, the easiest way to do, you can go on our website and we have a contact form, but the easiest way to do it is just to send an email to info@avoiceforchoice.org, and I'll add you.
Say what? I want to be on your newsletter.
Just say I want you to be on your email.
Okay.
And if you mention like Vaxxed or you know, something like that, I'll be. But if you just send an email, I'll
10,000 emails coming in.
Yeah. You're going to be really busy. But yeah,
I'll be busy. That we have capacity for.
Yeah.
And anyone who wants to volunteer their time to help, I mean, that's what we've got to do. We've got to all join.
Yeah, I mean, we have. You know, it doesn't need to be a lot. There are people that work for us for an hour a month. There are people like, what we really need to know is what your specialty is, what you're good at, so that if we throw something at you, like we have people that just do our Spanish translation stuff, and they're set up, and you know, it's not a lot, but it's, you know, whenever we have something, we go to them. There's graphic stuff. We can find something for everyone. Just tell me what you really love doing, because that's what you're going to be good at and you're going to want to do. So.
Yes, Nat, she is a Periscope peep. And
I am a Periscope peep.
Your Periscope name is
a Voice for Choice.
Voice for Choice. Yes, she is a peep. So.
And also, I'd just like to say publicly that Christina put a wonderful and hosted a wonderful evening yesterday. There were about 30 people there, and they all came together. And these were all individuals. One had a brand new little baby. There were other people with sharing their vaccine injury stories, but what that common ground was an open forum for us all to chat openly and discuss our experiences, and this is what we're trying to do by sharing these stories. But I was so impressed by that common ground that everyone was standing on, and that was very inspirational. There were a lot of people there that didn't have an opportunity beforehand to go and talk to people, so bringing these groups together, like vaccine injury groups, come together and have a coffee morning or whatever it may be, really instills that common ground and gives everyone a little bit more confidence to go out and spread the word. I think that's important, because we've all been thrown into boxes. Doctors say, oh, this is absolutely normal. Christina said it's not normal. Get out of the box. throw it to someone else, get them to open it and read the real truth about it. But thank you, you've been
It was
an
a
unbelievable
wonderful.
star.
It went,
in
and you
this.
put us up to stay, saved Vaxxed lots of money, and it was a really lovely night.
The interesting thing with that event was most of the people didn't know each other. So it was a fundraiser, and I put an invite out, and it was. I mean, I knew everyone just because I'd met them at some point, but I didn't really know more than like 3 or 4 people there, and most people didn't know each other. So it was a very cool event.
It was really, really fun, and you raised lots of gas money for the bus.
We did,
so
yes.
Thank you so much for that.
And
You're
let's say
welcome.
thanks to all the people that came.
Yes, thank you to all the people that came and that donated. I mean,
And the
that
food.
was the food, yes.
The food
Yeah.
was amazing. Oh my gosh, there's some in your fridge.
There is. We
I'm
need to
going
go get
back. I bagged some up last
Yeah.
night.
Yeah, we had amazing volunteers who
Pavlova,
bring.
and to Kathy as well, that brought the barbecue. Her husband
Yes.
cooked a barbecue chicken and brought that for our lunch. I mean, to
And a
everyone
tablecloth and
yesterday,
plates.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
And the stories, it was a powerful day. It was an exhausting day for me. How these guys do this day in,
I know.
day out, I do not know. But, you know, everyone was fantastic and we really had a great time. So thank you for coordinating
You're
all of
so
that.
welcome.
And thanks to everyone that made it such a special day for us all here.
Yes. Okay, peeps, we're going to go. Say goodbye to Christina. They
Bye.
love,
Thank you so
love,
much.
love you. And
Thank
you'll
you
just
for all you
watch
do.
all your hearts back. But thank you.
Thank you.